Now, there are no perfect numbers here, but I think we should talk about TDEE, what makes it up, and get people's heads wrapped around, like, why is this important for me to understand before we get into how many calories that I need? Because if you don't understand what the TDEE is, then you're never, or what yours is for you, or that estimated number is, the calories piece, the macros piece, that conversation can't happen yet. So from a TDEE perspective, what are we talking about?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think what it boils down to is we're talking about energy balance versus calories in, calories out. Yes, if we're looking to lose weight, we do need to be in a calorie deficit, but more accurate is an energy deficit. So it's energy in, energy out versus calories in, calories out. And what TDEE is it basically gives you the idea or an estimate, as you mentioned, of what your daily energy needs are. And that's going to be based first on your basal metabolic rate. And your basal metabolic rate essentially is the baseline amount of calories you need at rest. So that is if you are sitting in a chair all day long, you are still burning calories. Your body is still utilizing energy to keep your heart beating, to keep you breathing, even if your activity levels are essentially zero. So I've seen people who are eating even below their BMR. So they're severely under eating. We're not even factoring in things like non-exercise activity thermogenesis or NEAT. So the calories that you're burning outside of activity.
Working.
Yeah. Just going about your daily activities outside of your physical
your exercise.
activity.
Yeah. Your exercise routine, so to speak. So you have your exercise activity, and then you have your non-exercise activity. So exercise activity is like the workout that you did on the floor, the run that you did, the bike ride that you did. That's very specific.
Hiking.
Yeah, it's very specific to the exercise piece, but it's not taking into account, things like maybe what your job responsibilities are for the day. A lot of people have heard this, like the mailman or the UPS driver, male person, or the UPS driver is going to have probably a higher, well, let's just say they have a higher non-exercise activity level because they have a little bit more of an active type of job versus the computer coder that's sitting behind the computer all day and goes down to the Google cafeteria for 7 hours and has a cocktail while they're down there and goes back up and does 30 minutes.
Drink some kombucha on tap, play some foosball.
Exactly. So their non-exercise activity is going to be a little bit higher. This is not like, okay, so the UPS driver and the Google coder went to Orange Theory and did the same workout during the same hour at the same time. Those numbers are still going to be different, but that is exercise, not non-exercise. Mm-hmm. And that's important to understand. And there are some kind of, like some estimated factors, X factors we can put in there, variables that we can put in there based on our estimation of what our activity is outside of exercise. Those are, again, they're somewhat arbitrary, but there's some pretty good math and science and let's just say history behind this to understand that they're pretty close, right? But the BMR thing going back, I think what's important for people to understand is that makes up about 75% of the calories that you're going to burn all day long, every day. Mm-hmm. That is a major component.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the BMR is going to, that's going to shift over time if you are a larger human being in general, a larger frame. If you are building muscle mass, now your basal metabolic rate is most likely going to increase because you are burning more calories and more muscle mass that you have. So that's something that your TDEE as well as your basal metabolic rate can shift over the course of your program. But just to take it back in terms of what I like to start with when I'm working with a client, it's expectations in terms of avoiding or trying to get out ahead of any potential stalls, setting the proper expectations from the beginning. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're going to lose a little bit of momentum.
It's not linear.
Yeah, it's going to be non-linear, especially at the beginning of the year. People are very gung-ho. There's something to be said about, quote unquote, newbie gains, or if someone has really, just fresh off the couch and your body is just, you really haven't been doing much, you're probably going to make some pretty rapid progress initially. And then that progress may slow down a little bit. So I always just try to set the expectation that, number one, this is going to be a minimum of a 90-day process, and that's the bare minimum. And more likely, we're looking at 6 months, at 9 months, at a year. If you're trying to lose, I need to lose 30 pounds, it's not going to happen in just a couple of months. So we need to set that expectation beforehand, up front, that, hey, this is going to take some time. There's going to be some lulls. There's going to be some wins. There's going to be some quote unquote losses or periods where things seem to, not be happening as rapidly.
Yeah. So nonlinear, but you're also mentioning like the newbie that jumps off the couch that maybe entered in it with very little to no plan is having some really great results right now. I've been going to the gym. I joined this group class. I'm going 3 or 4 days a week now. I've lost a bunch of weight. My clothes are fitting differently. Everything's good. I had no idea where my TDEE was when I started. And I certainly don't know where it is now, but what I am maybe noticing is, okay, things are starting to slow down for me. I'm not seeing the same result. What has happened? Metabolically, your body's adapting to this. So metabolic adaptation is good. And we're going back to the linear thing and the nonlinear thing. If you've reached a plateau, good. Like that's supposed to happen. Your body is going to do that. So don't think of that as a negative. Metabolic adaptation is important. There's things that we need to take a look at there. But the person that entered into it with no plan at all, not having a baseline and knowing where some of these maybe numbers were or how many calories I was consuming versus how many calories I need, brings us back to the caloric versus the energy deficit. And if you've been losing weight, then you've been in an energy deficit. Your body has needed more calories than you've been providing it, or you've been creating a demand for calories through exercise and your non-exercise activity and your exercise activity, through your BMR. That's created this energy deficit, and your body is going to be burning fuel and fat for a while until it doesn't, and potentially other things in order to nutrients in another way that could be robbing from the tissue you want to maintain, like your lean tissue, to a point where now it's reached a level where it's gotten very comfortable at burning less energy to get the same work done. That is metabolic adaptation. We would typically look at that as like a negative. It's not a negative. It's very natural. It just is what happens.